Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on. Welcome back to the podcast for anybody that's joining. Today we've got Kevin Thomas and Steve Concotelli on.
That's
I
it.
know. Trust me. You probably get my last name's terrible. I get so many people butchering my last name. So Steve and Kevin helped kind of put together Kevin's car, Kevin's time machine. Kevin kind of runs all of the Midwest with your car. Certainly for me, any rentals that come in, particularly for the Wisconsin area, I've got you on roster. If you guys are looking for a car, this car is amazing. We're going to get into some of the detail on the particular car. And yeah, I know, Kevin, you have a funny backstory. And again, I wanted to talk about that for your particular car, much so that I don't even know. And again, I'll pull some pictures up here for everybody. But you want to take us through kind of the backstory and how you purchased your car, why you purchased your car, and anything else that you want to tell us kind of about it.
So I'm kind of the abnormal DeLorean owner where I didn't seek out buying a DeLorean. I've actually had two DeLoreans seek me out. So prior to me owning this car, the black one here that you see, I owned another car. I still have it, stock, that I did a restoration on that was owned by a friend of mine who approached me to buy that car. And I wanted to challenge, so I took it on. So once I completed that car and had it back home, I had been out for a Sunday drive with it and just cruising around, and I pulled into the driveway. And as I came down my street, before I pulled into the driveway, I passed a old lady and grandkids walking down the street. Didn't think anything. And I'm getting the car ready to put it in the garage, and all of a sudden the old lady's standing at the end of my driveway, kind of waving at me, trying to get my attention. I just thought she was, there to say, "Hey, nice car." Well, I walk out to say hello to her, and she goes, "Hey, I have one of those and I need to sell it. Would you happen to know anybody that's interested?" And I'm like, "Well, tell me more. Tell me more about this car." And so she kind of gave me a little bit of a rundown on it. Did not tell me, however, that it was painted black. But long story short, the car, this lady lives 2 blocks from me. I had never seen her before. She had never seen me before. Didn't know the DeLorean was here. Turns out that this car had belonged to her late husband, who had died back in 1990. Her son had some moderate interest in it and had tried to do some restoration work on it and ended up breaking a bunch of bolts off. And it was in bad shape, mechanically. The frame was really rusty, as you'll probably see in some pictures coming up here. But anyways, she put me in contact with her son, or had me give her my contact information, said she was going to have her son call me. And I thought, well, there's no way this guy's ever going to call me. Like, this is just too bizarre. Well, within about 15 minutes, my phone was ringing, and it was her son, saying, "Hey, I understand you just talked to my mom, and you might be interested in our DeLorean." And I'm like, "Yes, absolutely, I'm interested in your DeLorean." So he ended up actually sending me the photo that you're looking at now and some other photos of it. And I'm like, "Oh, well, it's black." And so looked at the photos that he had. It looked a little rough, but I agreed to come and take a look at it. And I didn't really know where he was at price-wise or anything like that. And it was about 45 minutes from where I live. Up there and met with him and looked the car over, and it was rough. The interior was actually, this is actually a picture here that you're looking at after I had brought it home, but the interior was in pretty good shape, but it was painted black. The frame was extremely rusty. He had taken all the fuel injection components off the car. He had broke off the bolts for the slave cylinder. He was trying to shave the slave cylinder out and broke the bolts off. And anybody that's changed one of those knows that you're gonna have a really hard time drilling those out with the motor and transmission in the car. So he just kind of got himself stuck, and the frame was super rusty. So torsion bars in the doors were broke. And I kind of put a list together of what it was going to need that was obvious, and I made him an offer on it, and he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." He goes, I want to see this car back on the road." He goes, "I think you're the guy to do it, and I'd love for you to have it." And that was the deal. And I went back about a week later and picked it up.
So initially, you already knew going in you were going to strip the paint, bring it back to kind of life. You just wanted to see exactly how bad it was.
Not really, actually. My goal was really just to get it running and driving. It hadn't been on the road for about, I think, 13 years or so. It just been sitting there. The brakes were all seized up and the clutch was blown out of it, and I didn't even know if it was going to run. He told me that it had a transmission problem. Well, transmission problem ended up being the clutch was blown out of it. But Yeah, I didn't really have a plan for the car. I just wanted to get it running and driving, and then I didn't really know what to do. I was thinking of selling it, or maybe it'd be cool to have a black one and a stainless one.
Yeah,
So
I think it's sharp. I like seeing some of the ones that are painted. I mean, some of them are the ones that are really well done. I think they're nice. Honestly, I happen to like them personally. But I think
yeah,
I saw one at DeLorean Midwest that Mike had, and it was like the candy apple red or whatnot with the turbo. It was absolutely gorgeous. I know it's not there anymore. It was sold off. I don't know if you've seen
yeah,
pictures of that one.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah, yeah. That was actually sold from John DeLorean's brother's dealership. So
Beautiful car.
yeah, car. Yep, yep,
So that brings us to this part, stripping the paint.
yeah.
Now, with Steve, were you involved in that process with doing that with him?
Thankfully, no.
Oh my gosh! So I have a few slides here of it. So as you can see here, kind of like a rear bottom quarter panel starting.
Yeah, so that quarter panel had a big dent in it, and that's actually the quarter panel that's still on the car. We were able to work the dent out and
Right.
save. I figured I would start with that, and if I had to repaint it, no big deal, because it was already kind of messed up. So no, the stripping of the paint. So after I got it running, I drove it around. I got it running like I believe in July, and I drove it around July and August a little bit in September, and honestly, like the black DeLorean, people were confused by it. They didn't understand that it was actually a DeLorean. They kind of
Yeah.
looked funny and they're like, oh, that's weird. And it never grabbed the attention that the other DeLorean grabbed. And not that that was a deterrent for me to stripping the paint, but if you look closely at this black paint job, you could tell that it wasn't good. It needed to be repainted. So I thought, well, if I'm going to repaint the car, I'm going to try stripping it first. And if I got to repaint it black again, fine. Or if I thought about wrapping it like a matte black, fine, I'll do that. But I'm gonna see if I can get this thing back to stock. And so yeah, started with that lower left quarter panel, and away I went. And it was like Steve said, thankfully no. I got about halfway into it, and I'm like, what did I get myself into here? So it was about 150 hours to get everything stripped. The door jams were a nightmare. But the big problem with stripping it for me, and there's other DeLorean owners certainly that have stripped their cars before, but when they painted this car, they skimmed the entire thing with Bondo.
Oh,
Black sanded it out to try and get it as smooth as they could. And that's a typical thing for body shop to do. But the Bondo kind of blocked the chemical reaction that you would normally get between the stripper and the metal. And so it made it extremely difficult to get the paint to lift. So there was a lot of elbow grease that went into scraping it off. Where normally you would put 1 or 2 coats on to get the paint off, I was putting 5 or 6. And so it elongated the process considerably.
well, hats off to you because I know it's not an easy process on a normal one. This one even more so. And Steve, I mean, it really is. And we'll get into in a little bit of pictures when the car is actually complete. But during this process, is that when you kind of started thinking about what made you want to turn it into like a DeLorean Time Machine? Did you have that in the back of your mind? Was it something that kind of came to you during the process? I mean, I'm curious, and I'm sure other people are as well. Just if you didn't go into it, as you said, kind of wanting to do that, when did that turn? When did that switch for you?
So yeah, so there's a backstory to that as well. And for those of you who don't know Steve Concotelli, director, producer, creator of the OUTATIME movie.
Yeah.
Steve and I had met probably back in I think 2017 or so.
Yep.
At a Back to the Future screening here in Madison that was just local. He just happened to be there promoting his film, and he was grew up in Wisconsin but was living in LA at the time. And him and I just met because I had my other DeLorean outside and became friends. And lo and behold, 2020, Steve moves back to the Madison area and ends up living about a mile from where I live. So of course, both being Back to the Future fans, both being DeLorean fans, we became very quick friends. And
Yeah.
of me restoring this car and getting it mechanically sound, and it would date back to before you see the picture of it with the hood half grain there. Steve had stopped in the shop one day while I was working on it and said, hey, this would make a really good time machine. And so the seed was kind of planted right then. Yep, the seed was planted right then and there. And even at this point, I wasn't 100% convinced we were going to do it. We had certainly talked about it, and I was thinking would be cool. But at this point where you see the photo here, I'm still not convinced that it's going to actually become one. But yeah, we were definitely thinking on it at that time, and it was on the radar.
Yeah, and for anybody who hasn't seen the At a Time restoring of the A car, go watch it. I'll link to it at the bottom of the description to this. It's available out there in a lot of places. One thing I'm actually very proud of. This isn't set up. This is my normal office at home.
Yeah.
Joe Walzer was kind enough many years after they sold for charity the parts off of the A car restoration. I had hit Joe up because I know Joe pretty well, and I said, hey, whatever happened to any of those? Can I still get them? Do you still have pieces? I got a few pieces lying around for you because if you want to donate to charities, like I'll make you a little shadow case for you and send it off to you. So I'm proud to have some pieces off of that A car restoration sitting in my office. Again, it's a proud display. You can see I've got a few things up, but certainly a proud display for me. And for anybody who's not seen it, I'm sorry that you haven't, but go watch it. It really is. I mean, the amount of work and detail is telling in that, but you can imagine behind the scenes and how much more work was done in it. So the fact that we've got Steve on here and that the stars aligned perfectly for you, I think with your car and having Steve so close.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that car literally fell into my lap, and it fell into my lap for an extremely reasonable price. In fact, it's the cheapest DeLorean that I've ever seen sell. So it fell into my lap, and then Steve just, miraculously appears back in my life in Madison. And it was 100% meant to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, and obviously knowing what the car looks like now. I mean, maybe let's start. I don't know, where do you want to start? Let's start with the exterior of the car, and then we'll move into the interior of the car. So, kind of. Oh, and here's another shot there of the car off the frame.
Yeah, so I'll actually talk about that a little bit
Sure.
before we jump into the time machine build, and I'll make it quick. But I had mentioned earlier in the interview here that the frame was extremely rusty. So as a lot of you know, I work at DeLorean Midwest, and we had a car come into DeLorean Midwest that had a fire in the engine compartment, and pretty much burned the entire interior and stuff out of it, burned the engine up and stuff like that. But the frame didn't have any damage to it. So Mike and I exchanged frames. I had that really rusty frame and suspension, and I took the frame and suspension off of this car that had the fire and swapped it and put it onto this car. And then I actually had to change the motor over and all that stuff. But so yeah, this is actually me pulling the body off the frame for the first time here.
I actually saw that burned out car. It would have been pre-COVID, but not probably too much more before pre-COVID. I was inside DeLorean Midwest with Mike, and he took me back where there's a bunch of cars, and he pointed the one out to me that was all burnt out, and I was kind of shocked at how bad it was. But it's good to know that the frame was salvageable.
So we actually ended up pairing the frame off of this car with that car. And there's actually a DeLorean Nation video about the world's worst DeLorean. You guys can look it up on YouTube if you want, about that car. And somebody actually recently purchased it and is gonna start working on it.
Wow. And so for anybody who doesn't know, also who wants to get into some other DeLorean content outside of the time machine, Kevin does kind of run. It's called DeLorean Nation. There's a Facebook group page for it. And there's also a YouTube channel for it. I'll link it in the description for anybody who wants to take in some of that content. You guys definitely have some good stuff going there too. So I want to make sure that we plug that for you guys. So if anybody's interested in any other DeLorean content, I'll have a couple links, as I mentioned, down below. One to the At a Time documentary, and then another to the DeLorean Nation for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. There's another beautiful picture of it.
Yeah, so this is, and you can see my wolf head wheel sitting there in the bottom. I spent a lot of time regraining this thing. So in lieu of them skimming the whole body with Bondo, they had taken probably 40 grit sandpaper to it prior to them skimming it, and made all kinds of, basically just scribbled all over the car. So there was no grain left. It was just completely a mess. So I had to drum sand and use the body file and use the wolf head a lot to try and get the grain back to it. And this is one of the first pictures when I put the bumpers back on it after I was done working on the stainless.
I just can't imagine the work that went into it. I mean, it's just so much. But the fact that you had enough fortitude to think you could turn it into something. I mean, credit to you for that. And I mean, again, looking at it now, car's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, a normal regrain takes about 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours to do on a car. That's with some moderate scratches. I think I probably had 50 to 60 hours in on that one.
Unbelievable. That's just insane.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So we'll start with the exterior of the car, and on the last kind of Q&A I did with a couple of Time Machine owners, because a lot of people ask, well, how do you get parts? Where can I go buy parts? Where I think that's half the fun, if you want to call it that, in wanting to build a time machine, is figuring out where you can get the parts, because these parts aren't generally available to the public. I mean, some parts were certainly made for the time machine, but others were, aerospace parts that you just can't find anymore. And if you do, they're outrageously expensive, like the Janitrol or other parts like that. So, moving into this, I mean, you can talk if you want to about how you sourced some of the parts. I've been very open to people about, hey, there are groups out there for time machine builders if you want the help to help source parts. We do group buys and things of that nature. So kind of as we go through here on the exterior, maybe talk about some of the parts you hated, the parts you liked, sourcing parts, things of that nature.
So that was part of Steve and I's agreement that I do a lot of the building if Steve could source the parts, because that is definitely not my specialty. So I'm going to let Steve take this and go ahead and talk to you about parts for a little bit here.
Yeah, and that's really how the partnership formed. Is that Kevin is a DeLorean expert, knows everything about DeLoreans.
Not quite everything, but
yeah. But compared to me, and I always wanted to do a time machine, but I know a lot about time machine parts, but I know nothing about DeLoreans. And so Kevin was missing somebody with time machine expertise, if you can call it that. And I was missing somebody who knew about just how to keep the car functioning. So when we found each other, it was really a nice complementary package of like, hey, together we can partner this, and we have enough to actually build a time machine and do it right.
Yeah.
The parts. The parts are interesting because you're right. The original parts are impossible to find, but nowadays, thanks to internet groups and like even the Facebook groups, it's easier to make a time machine now than ever before. And I would say that with the caveat of, aside from finding original parts, you can't find them anymore. But with all the very, very talented people making replica parts that are almost exactly screen accurate, you can build a time machine. But yeah, like what you don't want is, you don't want to just say like a laundry list of like, here's the shopping list, go buy it. That defeats the purpose of building a time machine.
Yeah.
Is creating your own to-do list, finding pieces that you like, whether they're screen accurate or not. Like, what do you want your individual time machine to look like? And, even amongst the builders that I know, a lot of them have slight differences just based on flavor and what they like. But yeah, it was a deep dive, just starting to find parts. I generated our Excel spreadsheet. And I first started out by reaching out to the guys in the restoration team, Joe Walzer, Mark Dellinger, Joe Kovacs, a lot of the guys that I worked directly with who had built time machines in the past. And I said, hey, do you have any leftover parts that are maybe like not quite correct, almost correct? Dana Gasser, another friend, had a bunch of parts, and they said, yeah, we cumulatively, they had enough parts that got us started. And then it was just the process that everybody goes through, looking online and calling, AN Plumbing and all the hose places and Zero and trying to figure out which boxes you need, and a lot of trial and error. One thing is, I did learn how to do casting. That was my big thing, is I learned how to do, resin casting for the flux boxes and for the parts in the car, and like the cannon elbows you can't find anymore. So it was good that I got to really experiment in that. And then, of course, the vents, we had them professionally cut and welded. Yeah, we found them however we could. We found parts.
Yeah, I probably did you guys a disservice, and I joke when I say this, because I've been acquiring as many authentic parts as I can over the years, and I was fortunate enough to get the backup orange tube from the Sikorsky helicopter. It was the backup for the A-car. It was from one of the members of the restoration team. It was the one that they had left over that they didn't put on the A-car. I was able to acquire that, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. So I probably did you guys a disservice by not being available, but I'm not going to apologize for being able to get it.
One of the parts, we've got a real authentic one on the car.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
That's one of the parts, we have a real authentic one on the car.
And it is rare, I would say, in the community. And again, as you mentioned, everybody's car, not one car is the same, right? people taking liberties with their cars. And I think that's the fun about it too, is making it unique and making it true, while still trying to adhere to the screen accuracy. Like this one, for instance, is the Part 1 car. It's not, was there a specific reason you wanted to go with the Part 1 car as opposed to, the Mr. Fusion?
Yes. I always like the Part 1 car because it's the first thing you saw when you saw Back to the Future. Is it came out of the truck and it had the nuclear reactor and it just looks so damn dangerous.
Yeah.
I just absolutely love it. I mean, I assume you felt the same way.
Yeah. I mean, I was just so excited to build a time machine. I would have done whatever you said, but when you there to me and why you wanted to go that way, and now there is absolutely no looking back for me. Like I love the fact that this is a Part 1, replica, and yeah, I love it.
And, and like the core lights up, and we have a plutonium. You can open it up and drop the plutonium rod in. I just love it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it goes without saying that you guys did phenomenal work on the car, and I absolutely love it. And I'm not one to pick apart anybody else's car; it's their car. But just to see the attention to detail on this one is above and beyond. I mean, it really is. It is such a nice car. I mean, you can see that the quality of the parts and the quality of the work just by looking at the videos or the pictures, I should say. I mean, here's a great one too. I mean, look at the green tubes. I mean, there is a level of detail here that some builders don't take, but to be able to see it here, I mean, really it's a thing of beauty. What one thing or a couple things on the exterior, not excluding the bands, because those are usually the worst on the exterior. What are some of the tough spots you guys hit on the exterior build?
How would you say? I mean, like sourcing them and then putting them on were two different challenges.
Yeah.
Like we still have one or two pieces I'm still trying to source. The build is still ongoing.
Yeah, I feel like nobody's ever officially done, right? People are always upgrading their car, new parts, things of that nature. Now, that Janitrol, did you guys get an actual a real Janitrol?
No, that was one of the first pieces I acquired way back when. It's like an aluminum, not casting, but like somebody built it and it looks fantastic, and it's made out of metal and it's got nice welds on it. So
it looks great.
Yeah, I think I bought it off one of the Facebook groups like early on in our build.
Yeah, nobody's really done one of those in a while. I think there's been talk of it here with one of the guys in England who we've done a lot of group buys with. Kevin, maybe you have as well. I think he might be trying to get that back going. So that would be good for the group.
Yeah, he's brought a lot of parts to the community, which has been very helpful for a lot of builders.
Matt, is that who it is? I believe.
James
Napier.
Yeah, we know Napier well.
Yep. Yeah.
Great guy. Yeah. I work with Matt Napier at my normal job. So yeah, James Napier. Yeah. I've gotten several parts from him. I mean, the guy really does put forward some good stuff. What are some other hard to source components you guys have was tough?
Well, I can say, actually, looking at this photo, it's interesting. The red capacitors I did castings for, and getting the color match was hard. But actually, it's those the 3 Pac-Man parts right there. It's easy to do them close. A lot of people do them in rubber and they get them really close. But turns out that I'm friends with Mark Dellinger, who was on the restoration team, who was in charge of replicating them for I don't think he replicated them for the A car, but he had the CADs, and so he built us a set. So those are like as accurate as the actual piece, whatever they might be, because those pieces have never been discovered what they were actually from.
Yeah.
Mark built those to such a standard, like it has the little roller wheels inside, so you could use those in whatever machine they actually came from. They're that accurate. So and I wanted those to be super accurate because that's one of the first parts you see on the side of the car. Yep. And like I wanted to make sure that those were really spot on.
Yep. And then the bases of those are just zero cans with the tops chopped off of them. And so we had the full zero cans, and I had to sit with my jigsaw and cut the tops off. And I had 3 zero cans and I had 3 hockey pucks, and I needed to make sure that I didn't mess any of them up. So that was a nerve-wracking moment for me to get those all cut right.
Like $30 a can.
Yeah.
Yeah, not cheap. That's another question a lot of people, and some people don't mind saying, other people don't like people. How much does it cost? Well, my answer is to buy one built or to build it yourself. 2 different questions, 2 different answers. And my question is always to somebody, or my answer to them is always, just start researching parts. You can find prices out there for these parts if you want to, but it's not going to be hand fed to you. You got to put in, no pun intended, you got to put in time.
Correct. Yeah, and
to figure this out.
The Back to the Future community, especially on Facebook, and this is something we don't talk about enough, but like the people on the Facebook builders groups are extremely helpful.
Yes.
But they want to make sure that you are also contributing back and not just asking for a shopping list. If you just go on there and say, give me a list, they're gonna be like, no. Like, what parts are you helping to bring to us? Are you making something? Are you finding something? What are you returning back to us that then we will return this information back to you? So it's really collaborative, and that's what I love about it. If you show you're really into it and trying to solve, and like, hey, I found this way to do this one thing, or you can use this piece instead of this piece, the community will really try to help you with your build.
Yeah, sure. I agree. I mean, wholeheartedly. Even here's a good one with the oil separators.
Yeah.
I just got an email last week on actual real ones, and I mean, it was outrageous.
Yeah. Those, see, again, this is where we were lucky, where Mark Dellinger from the restoration team, he had a real Pesco, and he let me borrow it, and I cast it.
Yep.
And so those are resin cast, and it's funny because the oil separator we had was a little bit dinged up and not quite square, and the dings are in the resin cast version of it, so it makes it look even more authentic.
It looks pretty dang good. Yeah,
it looks great, and a lot of people, they use what they can get, right? Whether it be a resin cast, whether it be a real part, steel parts, group buys, whatever. People use what they can find in order to complete their car and do it in a way that it holds true to the screen accuracy. And this is another amazing example of just ingenuity, right? I love it. And honestly, to the naked eye, if you really weren't, you wouldn't know these things are casted resin. I mean, they look every bit as real as a metal component, to be honest with you. Even from the picture, they really do.
I spent a lot of time. Steve cast them, and then I took them and finished them.
Yep.
Bondo and sanding, and then I ultimately painted them with a little bit of a weathered look, so they looked legit.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot that went into that, and same goes for the flux boxes too. The flux boxes were probably one of the bigger hoops that we had to jump through, because we created our own. Got a CAD file, 3D printed them, and then use the 3D print to make a casting out of. Of course, nothing comes out perfect.
Yeah.
And we did some tricks with ours to lighten them up a little bit, and there was a lot of massaging and a lot of sanding, a lot of Bondo, and I had several hours into each one getting them to my satisfaction.
So yours are more. What color would you say yours are? Because that's a fun topic too. If you're a gray guy or you're a blue guy when it comes to the flux boxes, yours seem to have a little bit of both. Actually, they seem to be like a happy medium of gray and blue.
Correct. Yep. So I followed about the time I was doing those, there was a big debate on the Time Machine Builders group about what was the correct color.
Yeah.
And so I just kept going back and forth, and guys would post, Peter would post a link of what he was using for paint, and somebody else would post what they were using for paint. And we just kind of went back and forth, and Steve and I were both watching it, and we got to, somebody had posted a color, and I'm like, that's it.
Yep.
And Steve was like, yep, that's it. And I figured out what it was. And that's ultimately the color that we painted them. So kind of hit it right in the middle.
I think I have to agree. It's spot on, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Hey, I mean, give credit where credit's due. I'm certainly that type of guy. I mean, when something to this level is done and to the quality is done, I mean, I'm happy to give the credit. Now, let's move on to the flux bands, because I think you went a little bit different route, right? You didn't use the actual metal that some other builders do. You went about it a little bit different way, in a very smart way as well. If you want to talk about those.
We did, and we'll catch some heat from the community for this, I'm sure, because there's always that debate going on too.
Yeah.
Do you use PEX or do you use the aluminum? And yeah, the fact of the matter is, the aluminum is accurate, and some will say it's just as easy to do the aluminum as it is to do the PEX. Maybe so. I decided to try this, and Steve was on board, and we can always go back and redo them. But the honest to God's truth is, the way I have them painted up and the way they sit on the car, you can't tell that that's not aluminum.
I agree.
was easier. It was easier to work with.
By a long shot.
Yep. And the flex band brackets that we got from Steve McGuigan, were set up for PEX, and they had a nice spacer to hold the LED lighting and stuff already built in. And so it was just for us at this point in our build, it was the way to go. And it's one of those things that if a couple years down the road, we're not liking the way it's holding up, we can always go back and do them in aluminum. But one season in here with it and quite a few miles on the road, and they look just as good as the day we put them on the car.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look close to know that there's a difference.
Yeah,
that the PEX has a little bit more bow than aluminum, obviously, but I was there when they bent them for the A car, and like the misery of like was a week's worth of work between the team, bending, rebending, heating, bending. I'm just like, no. And so I was extremely happy to be part of this solution.
Yeah, I know when Kevin, when you had posted about it on the group stuff, a lot of people, I saw an aha moment from a lot of people, honestly. It was like, well, let me see how well it turns out for him. And then you painted them and then had a like real versus these, and people couldn't tell the difference. And they were like, okay, I think that might have swayed some people.
You can't tell the difference.
Yeah. You really can, unless you're a time machine guy and there's never been at any showing or anything that we've done, any event where somebody's come up and go, hey, those aren't real. You can't tell. And I painted them, I primed them, used a self-adhering primer because it is hard to get paint to stick to them. Painted them with an aluminum paint, and then I used a flat clear over the top to give it some extra protection. So they will scratch it. I mean, you could take a knife and scratch the paint off of it, but overall they've held up very well in comparison to some that I've seen.
Yeah, I can't think of too many owners that would come up to you and call you out. I can think of one owner that would come up and call you out. But
I know of one too.
Probably the same person, but I mean, listen, that's
okay. That's okay.
I think it's a good solution to a pretty complex problem when it comes to the exterior of a time machine. I mean, again, I think you opened a lot of people's eyes moving forward that may just say, screw it, I'd rather go this route. It looks just as good and it's easier to work with. So
they're like Steve said, they're a little, you can't get the defined bends. If you look at it next to an aluminum barred car, the bends in the aluminum are a little bit more defined. This is a little bit more smooth rolling, a little swoopier.
Yeah.
But to the 99% of the people, 99.9% of the people that are going to see the car at an event, they're going to have no idea.
I've only seen one person that has, and I'm not sure how well it works. I saw Bruce Colombe. He had a rigging system to do his.
Yes.
I don't know how well it works. It looks like it probably does, but again, I don't know if it's any easier than going about it the normal way.
I would say, Bruce builds quite a few cars, and I would say building a jig for doing that would most definitely be the way to go. And if you had showed a picture earlier of our vents, like right away when we started looking at this, our vents, we built a jig to put our vents together. And we were able just to place the pieces of metal into the jig, and it held them in place, and we were able to just weld, and they turned out perfectly. And that's kind of what you get with doing a flex band, I'm sure, in a jig as well. Everything is there, and you just got to make it fit that shape.
Well, I'm happy I know now who to go to for my vents.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys aren't too far away. I'm in Chicago. You guys are, up there just over the border. You guys aren't all that far away.
No, we're not too far away from you at all. Nope.
Yeah. Nope. Well, I can coax you guys down here with beer and a free place to stay. Maybe we'll talk about that at another day.
Chance to get it on the road, we're up for.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely get together. Yeah. No. So we'll move into the exterior or the interior here, but sure. I was happy to see one last thing on the exterior. Your light choice. Again, another big topic of conversation, white versus blue versus, I guess, an aqua might be the agreed upon now for most people, kind of like what you have more of an aqua. But the original lights on the A car were white, but they showed up as more of a blue on TV, and they also had special effects as well. But they were an actual fluorescent tube on the real cars, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's always a topic of conversation, right? Well, what you see, most people don't know that they were white. Most people just in their mind, well, it's blue on TV. Why aren't yours blue? Why are yours white? So I'm happy to see you went with this more of the aqua color.
Well, I mean, if you want to take photos or you want to have the car in videos, you want to be able to turn on the bands and have them be the color people expect. I mean, yes, white is A car accurate. And I know people who do that, but then you turn it on and it's not what you expect,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's different, you can get the bands that do multiple colors. I know plenty of time owners that they have that as well, and to each their own. To me, it's not a big deal either way. But this color that you went with happens to be my favorite, to be honest.
Light blue.
I believe if I remember correctly, that's an ice blue.
Yeah.
Ice blue, that's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
It is an aqua, but yeah, ice blue. Oh, I think it's gorgeous. And I have a couple pictures at the end, I think, that have the lights on, and we'll be able to see those. Interior. Now, again, sourcing parts. There's so much wiring involved inside of this. Now, did you guys both kind of? Was it you, Kevin, doing all the wiring on the interior?
All the wiring.
It was. I would sit in my living room on Sunday mornings and have wire ran all the way across the living room, and I'd sit there for hours and measure and cut and measure and cut, and it would bundle together. And I had a list that is available in the Time Machine Builders group. I can't remember who put that out, but it was a list of all the wires, the lengths, the wire count, the color, and all that kind of stuff. And I just went off of that and sat in my living room on cold winter days and made wire bundles. So.
And here we see the flux capacitor, which people usually readily identify with a time machine. Did you happen to use the gentleman overseas? I think he's in Italy, that has the flux and a few of the other components that all work together, or did you kind of source those separately?
Yeah, France. His name escapes me.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but I not Joseph, but yeah, I bought his component pack for a lot of the internals for the time circuits, the internal for the gauges and stuff like that, just so we could have kind of a turnkey system that worked together. Because that's just one thing that I didn't have the technical expertise to try to tackle, and there was enough crap on the car that we had to figure out how to make and source. So like, okay, this is just a give me. Let's just get that, and then that's one less thing we have to worry about.
Yeah, you did get some capacitor parts from Gary Dunster.
Yeah,
and then Eric supplied the time circuits and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I built our flux capacitor.
Yeah,
but the internals, the electronics were part of his kit.
Yeah, I would think you have something somewhat knowledge when it comes to flux capacitors. So
you would think, but it was still a challenge for me to try to drill it out and put gaskets and plexiglass, and like it was neat because I didn't really get to do that on the A car. Like I saw people do it and I watched them do it, but doing it yourself for the first time is a very different thing. And it was a really, really fun challenge. Like, you would think that I saw the restoration, I was there, I'm a time machine expert. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I had a lot of mistakes and a lot of things, but I will say that after I did them, a lot more about the stuff I saw made sense.
Sure. Here's another one of my favorite components, the Torrent blower. I've still not been able to find an actual one. I know the actual, the hockey game that it comes off of. I don't know how many emails and phone calls I've sent out there's got to be a warehouse of these things, left over, but they really are just another one of those parts that are just almost impossible to find a real one.
That's one that when he found that one, I felt like we really won the lottery.
Well, that was James.
Yeah.
That's one of James's replicas.
Yep.
And it's a really good replica too, because it actually has the model number on it. All of it.
Really nice. Yeah.
It's fantastic. It looks every bit as one that would have came off of the, the actual little hockey game back in the 80s. That's another one of the funny things. Again, I like about researching parts and seeing where the parts came from. For me, because it just, in my mind, it's like, where did they ever come up with this? Originally to throw these things in, and what's even worse is now they're just so hard to find. It's I had fun with it for me. And no, I haven't found an actual one, and I may never find an actual one. But to me, it's the thrill of the hunt. Once you do locate a part, an actual part, I was able to find a real Janitrol, the actual one that was used. So, that was like one of those big moments for me. Like I feel like I won the lottery. If you do get them, they're just
that's a really big piece.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, there we go. There's another beautiful picture of the interior.
Yeah, got the VSR in there and the ice cube relays in there, and starting to piece things together. Now, I put this together and take it apart and put it together and take it apart probably 3 dozen times. So I don't know if this is actually in a stage of completion here. I was probably just trying to mock up and make it was working and fitting correctly.
And I think you just got a new VSR, correct?
I'm sorry.
Didn't you just get a new VSR? I think I saw one.
No, I think that was Steve out in Pennsylvania got a.
Okay, I knew somebody got one.
Yeah.
I was scrolling through. I knew somebody had one made.
We made that one.
We did, but you see, again, that's where like the artistry comes in. Like our VSR, our can is the correct can because we actually used a correct 0 can. But then the little red readout, the gauges, are not quite accurate. But it doesn't bother me. Like, it still counts up. It's still the same size. It's like, oh, it's not the same model. No, that's okay. Like fans don't care, and I consider myself a big fan, and I would not notice if you didn't tell me. So like so I love it because it makes it ours.
I actually, I didn't notice it. It's a picture, but still, I don't think I would have noticed just from looking at this, to be honest with you, just offhand, unless you would have mentioned it. So yeah, that's another fun part about it. Oh yeah,
Nice.
Let's get to this because your guys' vents turned out amazing. A lot of people paint their vents. There's a few cars out there that just leave them stainless steel, or they'll just paint them all black. Well, the actual car in the movie had almost this effect where it was leaking a little bit onto the vents. And did you guys happen to use a stencil, or because I know here in this picture is almost hand painted? So was that really just hand painted, all of it?
That was so Steve and I we put the car together with the vents just silver to start, and it just didn't set well with me. We both were like, we got to put some weathering on these vents. So thankfully Steve with all of his thousands of hours of footage from
it turns out like I had video of the entire process of them stripping and painting the actual vents for the A car.
Oh wow.
And so Kevin and I had an hour of just watching how the guys did it on the car, and so we would just watch the footage and take some stills and check and make sure it's accurate. I mean, what's nice though is that since the car is the Peterson, since then people have gone up and take thousands of photos of the vents, and so you can get a fairly accurate paint job now. But like seeing the process and seeing how they did it kind of informed us as to how we wanted to do ours.
Yep. And so Steve sent me some of the footage, and I watched how they did it. And this is at a friend of mine's shop there. He does some painting. And I just went in there and mixed up some paint in the cup gun there and gave it kind of a weathered patina, and then got the brush and the rag out and started painting stains on there. And
it goes without saying. And there's not a definite number of how many Time Machines replicas are out there. I mean, you hear all kinds of numbers. I think I was with Kevin Pike at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance here a couple months ago, and I think he had said something around 190 that he thinks might be out there.
Yeah,
I think probably a fair number. There's no real database for it, but I can say without reservation, there's not a lot of Time Machine replicas that have had somebody from the A-car restoration team help on the build.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because when I was on the restoration, almost everybody on the team had built a Time Machine already, and I was the only one who hadn't, and they gave me, if I could swear, they gave me shit about it. Like, why are you here if you hadn't? So this was finally like earning my entry into the restoration club.
Yeah, I can understand that, but again, you paid your dues, and now you've been a part of one, so there's that monkey's off your back, so to speak.
Yeah.
So here's a picture of the car kind of completed, at least the back end of it there. Yeah. I love the picture. I love seeing the cars at gas stations because people kind of lose their minds. Whatever.
We got swarmed after this picture. Yeah.
I can imagine, and I love this picture too. Oh, this picture's gorgeous. I love it.
That's a drone picture. Believe it or not, and I absolutely love that angle.
Yeah, it's absolutely sick. Again, one of my favorite pictures that you have. So yeah, for anybody, again, we do Time Machines from Los Angeles to New York, but this specific car, if you want this specific car, we can make it happen anywhere. But specifically for the Midwest and Wisconsin, I think you're doing an event for me. Where's it at? Is it like in?
I am headed to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, with this car on Monday.
So that was one of those that came up, and I know I was looking to see what my cars were, which ones that were closest, and you were probably in the top 2 to 3, and I was like, well, let me reach out to him and see if he's game for it, and without reservation, sure. What's it entail? I'm like, this, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, let's go.
So I think that was, I'm happy you're going to be doing that. No, I want to thank you guys. I mean, obviously for coming on and talking about it. I'm trying to give as many time machine owners again a little bit of exposures to show off their car. It's your guys' pride and joy. You guys put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and money into it. So again, for anybody wanting to rent his specific car, you go to DeLoreanRental.com, specifically for the Midwest and Wisconsin. But again, we can make it happen anywhere. And again, goes without saying, I'll put the links in the description to the Out of Time restoration documentary. Go watch it. I don't know how many times I've seen it. More so, I may watch it again tonight if my wife allows me. Just to watch that again, because it is just truly amazing. And again, DeLorean Nation, I'll make sure that I link that stuff for you guys as well. Give you guys some more exposure to that, and I'll probably link it as well out on I don't know, maybe on all of our social media and whatnot, just to throw you guys some more exposure.
So for anyone out there thinking of building a time machine, watch Steve's documentary first,
Yes.
and then ask yourself, do I really want to put myself through this?
It really is like that. Like
Yeah.
you watch the restoration, you're like, oh, it can't be that bad. No, it's harder. I mean, we had a team of 12 people who were the best at building time machines, and it was still hard. And just to end it, like Joe Walzer said it great in the documentary, and he said it in real life all the time. He goes, it's easy to build a time machine, it's hard to build one right. And whatever level of accuracy you're aiming for, is what you want. But like, we wanted this to be really nice looking, and it was a lot of work.
Yeah, that goes without saying. So I would agree. Don't build your own, just rent one through us.
Exactly.
It's much easier.
Exactly. Yep, we'll be happy to show up at your event.
It's much easier. So Steve, Kevin, I really do appreciate your guys' time coming on today. I know we'll be talking a lot, no pun intended, in the future, and hopefully getting together at some point in time. So
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, guys, again for coming on. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Jason. Have a good one.